Hey guys, Sean, Rod, thanks for showing up today at the daily copy review meeting. Let's go ahead and take a look at everything we put out yesterday so we can see how we can improve. Let's have a look. So first subject line, important information for new members of the weekly 2x trade alert, urgent. Okay, second subject line, this is the same as having the very best money-making machine available. Urgent information for new members of the 2x trade alert. Dear, all right, I'm gonna stop right now. Dear Sean, this is I'm gonna give you a solid D- on this one. The very best money-making machine available. That's probably about the scammiest copy I've ever read in my life, honestly.
Oh,
I'm not sure who's been training you. I don't really know how you came to the idea that you thought you could get away with this. What is this?
I'm just doing the best that I can.
That's not good enough. 916% returns. You've got to be kidding me. Where'd you come up with that?
Adding. I used adding.
I have never, ever seen such terrible, terrible copy. Rod, could we take a look at your copy, please?
Of course. Let's go. So the subject line is open me, biatch. Dear John, you have small peepee? Stop the small peepee with a big peepee. The big peepee you get with a leather wallet. Or a axe. Buy now for big peepee.
Wow, Rod. This is amazing copy. I've never seen copy like this. Look at this first line. You have a small peepee. What incredible intrigue. Question mark. Then you further it. Stop the small peepee with a big peepee. Look at that extra layer of intrigue there. How am I going to stop the small peepee? Look at this benefit. Buy now for big peepee. Sean, do you see that?
I do see the big peepee.
That is how you do. Good copy. A+, Rod. Wow.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
$10,000 bonus.
It's true. The difference between good copy and bad copy can mean the difference between a lot of money and abject failure, dying in poverty, and your mother being very, very disappointed in you, and not attending your funeral, and spitting on your grave after that, and then not bothering to visit every year. It's not good. Which is why it's important you know what the difference is. So in this video, we're going to talk about some misconceptions of what makes copy good and what makes copy bad. Then we're each going to show you some examples of good copy and bad copy across sales letters, emails, brand, and content marketing, so you know what is what. And then to top it all off, just because we like you, we're going to finish with 4 tips that you can use today to improve your copy and make sure that your mother always loves you.
One of the most common misconceptions about copywriting is that salesy copy is always bad. They may see a piece of copy and think, ooh, that is scammy sounding. That is salesy copy. Poo-poo. That's bad. But it's not always the case. Sometimes salesy copy is exactly what a business needs because it's working. Salesy copy can oftentimes be super direct, super specific, and super benefit driven. There's not a lot of fluff, not a lot of fat. It's straight to the point. It's clear, and there's no question about what action the customer or the reader needs to take.
And that brings us to misconception number 2, that the only way to assess the quality of copy is by its financial result. This is absolutely not true. And as someone who works in brand copywriting or just the brand world more generally, I can tell you that the way we measure success often has absolutely nothing to do with how much money a given campaign generates. Why? We live right now in what is called the attention economy. One of the most valuable metrics you can use to track the success of your copy is by how much engagement it's getting. That's not just how much money you're making off the ad. We care just as much about how many people are looking at our ads, how many people are engaging with posts, how many people are on our lists as how much money a campaign generates.
All right, the third big misconception, and this is a common one, is the sheer notion that people can even know what made a piece of copy work or not. Oftentimes, when we put out a piece of copy into the world, there will be what's called an after-action report or some sort of analysis that talks about, like, whether a piece of copy tapped into some emotion or whether a headline was really like benefit-driven. Oftentimes, we have no idea why a piece of copy worked or not. We can intuit or infer certain things based on what we've seen work in the past. But really, any sort of marketing or copy analysis is always going to be subject to what's called a post hoc ergo propter hoc fallacy. That is, just because we saw the results of something, that doesn't mean that we can know what came before or what led to a certain result. And so a lot of the misconceptions around this is that there can be some objective way of always making sure that your copy is good. Unfortunately, there isn't.
And the last big misconception is one that I hear quite frequently, and I hear it from people that I like to call the shortcut crowd, that there is one perfect way to determine the quality of copy. Before you put copy out into the world, before you've seen any reactions or seen any results, some people might try to tell you that there are certain rules you absolutely have to stick by. And of course there are some guides which help. However, don't misconstrue this as something that should be lived by 100% and you can always exactly know what is and isn't going to work in the world of copy. After all, about 60% of all copy that the best copywriters in the world write goes on to bomb. It doesn't work. So don't think that they have a measuring stick that they use every time to get it right. Remember, people only show you the good stuff and they often make those decisions after the fact. Don't get sucked into believing that there is one specific set of rules you have to abide by when you're writing copy before you put it out into the world. Sometimes you just need to throw stuff at the wall and see if it sticks.
So that was a list of the major misconceptions people have about what makes copy good or bad. Now, we are actually going to walk you through and show you specific examples of copy we think are good or bad and what makes them good or bad. That way you can get a sense of what people out there in the world working in this business are doing and what they're looking at to determine whether copy is good or bad.
So let's get into the different types of copy we can be writing for and think a little bit more about what makes copy good or bad. I'm going to start with brand copy. The one thing I really want to hone in on is cultural salience. What is cultural salience? It is how relevant your ad is to a given cultural moment. The two ads I'm about to show you, one good and one really bad, both are trying to play off of being culturally relevant, but one does it really well and one does a really poor job of it. So let's just get into it. So this copy comes from an ad that Nike released addressing Colin Kaepernick being essentially blacklisted from the NFL and no longer being able to play in it. This was a huge cultural moment because a lot of people were talking about police violence and racial disparities in policing. And so when you had someone as famous as Colin Kaepernick essentially being banned from doing their job because he spoke up and said something, a lot of people felt like what he was doing was really heroic. And so he was the perfect example for Nike to use to get out there, say something in a way that was relevant both to the culture and to them as a brand because they are the voice of the athlete. Even though the copy is really simple here, it struck a really deep note culturally speaking because it was that on point in terms of the conversation that millions of Americans were having at the moment. The next ad, unfortunately, does not manage to do this nearly as well. What we're looking at right now is a still from a commercial that Pepsi released in 2020 during the middle of the Black Lives Matter protests, in which Kendall Jenner goes to a protest that is being held by lots of people of color and essentially solves their problem by just handing a police officer some Pepsi and achieving world peace. Even though this ad was also trying to tackle the issue of police violence and racial disparities, it ended up coming across as really inauthentic and honestly a little bit offensive because the way in which they were doing it was trying to basically use Kendall Jenner's status as a celebrity to say, hey, we can solve this if we just band together. And clearly that solution has not worked at almost any point in human history. Also didn't help optically that you had a movement about people of color and you just had this random white lady come in and solve it, which in effect added fuel to the fire. What makes things even worse is that when you're a brand as big as Pepsi and you spend as much money as you do on advertising, lots and lots of people see your ads. And so when you get it wrong, you get it wrong in a really, really big way. For example, this ad inspired a YouTube video that someone titled "Protesters Take on the Pepsi Challenge" that generated over 6 million views, where this person went to protests and tried to offer police officers Pepsi to no avail, which makes Pepsi as a brand honestly look like a joke. And that's on the good end of the spectrum of the kind of failing you can do with this sort of bad advertising. Types of things also end up generating memes that end up being way worse, such as people taking pictures from the civil rights movement and adding your campaign concept on top of it. It's a very bad look overall, and so even though it's a good practice to try to make your ads be culturally relevant and find your brand's place in the world, We have to be really, really sensitive to the way in which we do these things. Otherwise, it can backfire and result in things like this that are obviously terrible.
So I work a lot with content and editorial writing, and I'm going to now look at two pieces of editorial copy, a good piece and a bad piece, and I'll talk about why I label each one as such. This is what I would consider to be a good piece of editorial copy. It is written by someone named Tom Dyson, who is one of the best financial content writers out there. He actually writes a lot of his editorial like copy with a lot of the same principles. And this is a great illustration of an important principle that I want to talk about, which is show, don't tell. This starts out, I put my entire life savings into gold last year. It's pretty intriguing. Not because I think gold is about to rise, but because I think stocks are going to fall, priced in gold, by more than 80%. And I want to buy those 80% off stocks whenever that may be. That, in brief, was a trade I told you about on Saturday. That's pretty intriguing. You know, he thinks stocks are going to fall and he's getting ready to buy. I know this sounds far-fetched, and it does sound far-fetched. That's a pretty big drop, and a lot of people would find that unbelievable. But watch how he makes it believable. Look at how he introduces credibility into the discussion. But late last year, stocks suddenly got marked down 15%, priced in gold, and I thought, this is happening now. So I bet on even more stocks falling. Here's where it gets good. The last time I got this feeling was in 2012 when I found Bitcoin. I was in some internet forum for geeks, and someone mentioned it. I looked it up, and the moment I saw what it was, I knew. I just knew. It cost $4 a Bitcoin at the time. This was the only place to buy it, a website in Japan called Mt. Gox, and it was a brute to get a hold of. I had to open an account with a PayPal service to transfer the money. Then I had to jump through hoops like sending faxes, passport copies, bank details. The whole thing seemed like a scam. But I wired $5,000, which was a lot of money for a guy with 3 babies who was still trying to make it in the world. Then I wired another $5,000 and another. And then Bitcoin jumped to $6. And I thought, this is happening. Look at that same line again. This is happening. This is happening. It's that same line from above. So I wired another 10,000, which was enough. I withdrew all my Bitcoin. I had 3,330 at the time, and transferred them to a thumb drive via an internet airlock I set up using Linux, so they couldn't be intercepted by online thieves. Next, I made duplicates of the thumb drives in case they broke, got corrupted, and burned in a fire. I encrypted them, and then I hid them in 2 secret locations. Meanwhile, I'm a big mouth of this sort of thing. I told anyone who would listen to buy Bitcoin. I started giving them away, and you know what happened next. The price went crazy, and my investment turned into $1 million. And I thought, that's enough, I'm out. So I sold all my Bitcoin. After taxes, Bitcoin volatility, and Mt. Gox's insolvency, I ended up with about a $500,000 profit and a lot of pot lollipops. That's a bit that's left out. He was buying pot lollipops for his friends. I should have held on. The Bitcoin I had would be worth about $30 million today, which brings me back to the stocks falling in terms of gold. It's a little different, but I've got the same feeling about it as I had with Bitcoin. I've put an irresponsibly large investment into it. I've told my brothers and my parents to sell their index funds and buy gold, and now I'm telling you. So we will see. This is a great illustration of using a personal story to illustrate show, don't tell, that concept. Tom could have left it at the first 3 paragraphs, the first 3 lines where he's telling everybody now is the time to buy into gold. It's happening now. And then that could have been it. But it wouldn't have been very convincing. And he wouldn't have had a whole lot of credibility in there. What does Tom know? Who is he to say that this is going to happen or not? I read another analyst and they're saying the exact opposite. But then Tom talks about what he did buying Bitcoin, over 3,000 Bitcoin at $4. And if you're following the crypto markets today, you know it is significantly higher today. He immediately positions himself as someone to listen to, someone with a lot of credibility, someone who has feelings like this and has had feelings like this in the past and has benefited from them, and anybody who has listened has benefited from them. The inference there is that he is someone you should listen to. You may have ignored him that first time around when he was recommending Bitcoin, but I bet you're not going to ignore him again this time. So I think this is a really great illustration that we see a lot in both copy and editorial, where the guru is talking about an analog scenario or situation that they had participated in the past, that they had recommended or done in the past, and banking on that credibility for a prediction or a claim or something that they are making about an opportunity specific to today. This next piece of copy is what I would consider to be a not so great piece of copy. And let's read it. If you spent much time on social media, you've probably come across posts or comments with nothing more than this: clown emoji, world emoji. These two emoji, clown world, convey that whatever is being discussed is self-evidently absurd. It's further proof that we live in a crazy world. Few memes have the popularity or impact of clown world. It's used by political commentators of various stripes and has been adopted by many financial and economic commentators. It's an accepted critique of popular culture writ large. A recent event bolstered my belief that it's often what fails to get attention that best proves that we live in a clown world. Regardless of where you stand on what's happening between Ukraine and Russia, there is no denying that it is in fact a war. I tried to adjust my tone a little bit at the end there to highlight what a jarring transition we just made. And then is wishy-washy, regardless of where you stand and what's happening. There's no denying, in fact, that it is a war. I don't really know. He's not being really direct. Is he trying to say that this war is a part of the clown world that's happening, that we're seeing? This writer is trying to use what he believes to be a clever, funny introduction to hook readers when it really has nothing to do with the topic that he's going to be talking about, which is in fact a war. And if it does, he's not making that clear at all. This piece of writing is just, it's all over the place. It's trying to be relevant and clever and funny by introducing this meme clown world thing, which no one actually cares about, to introduce a topic that people should actually care about. I've seen this a lot with writers who don't actually know what they're doing. They write according to what they think is clever, and then they pivot to this topic at hand, which has nothing to do with, the underlying insight that they want people to take from their story. Or they don't make that connection clear. They just assume that, people are going to understand. Is he actually trying to say that this war we're under is part of this clown world, thing? He doesn't make it clear. It's not clear. It's all over the place, violating the rule of one. There's just a lot that's wrong about this piece of copy.
I want to show you some emails, specifically e-commerce emails. Now, I know that e-com sometimes gets bashed by people in the copywriting world, but it shouldn't, because it's awesome, and I'm going to show you why. But first of all, I'm going to show you some not so awesome copy and tell you why it isn't. And something you'll notice is that it's not even so much about the copy necessarily, it's the thinking behind the copy and around the copy, which is just as important. This is an email that I received. On the very top is the subject line, and below is the email itself. Now, I'm going to point out 3 pretty major errors in this, and one of you can guess what they are. But we're going to start with the top, which is the subject line, which is straight up copy. Now, when an email comes into your inbox, you really only have 2 options: open it or ignore it. That's it. The subject line is the main thing that's going to inspire someone to open your email or ignore your email. The other thing is the from line, by the way, which is the name of the sender. Because if you already know me and you trust me and you see me sending you an email, regardless of what the email subject line is, you're probably going to open it. But anyway, this is the subject line of this email that I got. Bearing in mind, it's from a company that I don't really know and I haven't bought from before. Be the ho-ho host with the most. That's not inspiring me to open it. I do not know what it means, for one. It's not actually intriguing me in any way or implying that there may be some benefit to me opening the email. I'm not even sure what it's in reference to, especially when I'm not that familiar with the company. And considering the hundreds of emails I get every single day, this is probably going to go in the ignore pile. The only thing this has going for it really is that it's slightly topical in the sense that it's around Christmas time and they're doing what I assume is a play on Father Christmas. Sorry, Santa Claus. Ho, ho, ho. But then it's like some weird corn snack? I don't know. So that's number 1. That's the biggest sin that this email commits, but there are a couple of others. Something you'll see in e-commerce emails quite frequently is that they're very image-driven, which makes sense because ultimately e-commerce is about physical products. And when you have a physical product, it's all about what the actual thing is. There's not really much getting around that. You have to ship something to someone. But I've never seen this company or this product before. I can't really read what it says. Smoky barbecue somethings, and they're just kind of in a bowl. All that tells me about this product is that it's some kind of food and it's smoky barbecue. I know nothing else about it. Is it meant to be a nice snack? Is it meant to be healthy? Is it meant to be something I can gorge myself on? Does it give me gains in the gym? Like, I have no idea. The image isn't actually adding anything to the product here, and we're gonna just ignore the kind of useless bit of fluff copy below that, which is just almost too good to share, which is like just the most boring and lame excuse for writing I think I've ever seen in an email. It's not doing anything. It's not telling me about the product. And that's the first image, and that's the first piece of writing that I see when I open this email. So that's the second sin. But the third, perhaps the most heinous, and this is something that you wouldn't know just by looking at it. When I opened this, it cuts off here. This section is what we call above the fold, which means that when you open it on your phone or on your PC, you can only see this top bit. That's it. So I have to do work to scroll down to even read what the headline is. Not just that, but the CTA, which in emails is probably the most important thing there is, because otherwise you just sat in your inbox for ages like a moron, is all the way down to the bottom that I can't see. So even if I was insanely amazed at this email and I really wanted to click through and buy the product, I can't do that very easily or quickly, nor is this clickable. All in all, this is not a good example of e-commerce copywriting, nor is it a good example of email copywriting, and it's just not a good example of any kind of marketing. And if you'll notice, I didn't even read most of the copy of this. This is what I mean. Copywriting isn't always just loads of words. It's often the stuff around the words, the format in which it's delivered, and the person you're writing to. But let's wipe our screens clean and let's have a look at an example of good e-commerce and good email copywriting. And what you'll notice is I've specifically chosen brands for this section that aren't your traditional, hypey marketing arenas. I haven't gone for financial, I haven't gone for health. I know we cover those a lot on the channel, but I wanted to show you that good copywriting is across all niches. And this is an example. Now, this email is doing a few things, but just like before, let's start with the subject line. This is a brand that I have had a relationship with previously. I hadn't bought from them on this account, but I had signed up to get a discount, I believe it was. And the subject line was, 1 day left, your first box is $5. And I knew it was from BarkBox. This is good for a few reasons. Firstly, I know who it's from, and they know that I've at least been interested in their products before. They know that I've given them my email in exchange for a discount, so clearly I must want something they have, and their main product is a box. They also know that I must know how much the boxes are because I was interested in them. So they're using existing knowledge they know I have to frame a decent offer. The boxes are usually kind of $15 upwards, but they're saying, hey, get yours for just $5, right? They also know it's my first box, so it seems even more personalized to me and more relevant to me. If it just said, get a box for $5, okay, fine, it's got a good offer, but it's not justifying why that box is $5. Here, it's bringing in the relevant piece of information that it's my first box, and because it's my first box, you can have it for $5. The icing on the cake is the start of the email subject line, which is the urgency. Now, we all love a bit of urgency, especially in e-commerce, because humans are creatures of impulse. We like to buy quickly, we like to spend stupidly, and we like things to arrive within 2 to 4 working days. 1 day left is a clear indicator that this offer is about to run out. So not only have I seen that this is a good offer, but I also know that if I want it, I have to act quickly. And because we're creatures of impulse, that only fuels my desire to have something that I know I want, but I don't yet have. But that's just the subject line. Let's have a look at the content of the email itself. Emails in e-commerce do not need to be works of art. E-commerce emails tend to just need to point people in the right direction and confirm what people already know they want. So when I open this, you don't need to say much more than, hey, you know this thing that we'd said in the subject line? Yeah, that's what this email's about. And yep, it's your last chance. Oh, look, and I'm adding a bit more justification because we're saying it's an early Black Friday offer as well. So all they've done is just reaffirm what I've clicked onto the email for already. Perfect, fine. You don't need to do anything more than that. You don't need to introduce a load more benefits. You don't need to confuse me with loads of different stories. You don't need to take me in a completely different direction. If there's a reason that I've clicked, you can just reaffirm that reason I've clicked and point me in the right direction. But there is also a bit of copy and there's a CTA. And let me tell you this email in my inbox cut off here. So not only do I have an image of the product, I have a really cute dog, I have a reiteration of the offer, I also have the CTA all above the fold. So if I am acting on impulse and I'm like, okay, that's quite good, They're just making it easier for me to click through and to buy. Fantastic. And let's just analyze the copy because this email deserves it. We're not going to make you and your dog wait until Black Friday for a great deal. Plus, all the other brands are doing early deals too. Subscribe now and your first box of original toys and treats is only $5. Is that going to win Mark Ford's award for greatest piece of copywriting ever? I would imagine not. The point is, this is saying all it needs to say. It's not stringing out over 4 paragraphs telling me all the benefits and fantastic things about the stuff you'll get in the box. It's being a bit quirky, it's being a bit fun, it's sticking to the brand that I like, it's reiterating the offer, and it's just nudging me to say, hey, you know, like this is an early deal, just go get it. You know, it's fun, and hey, the button's right here, claim the offer. That's all it needs to do. So when we're looking at good copywriting and we're looking at examples between good and bad, we don't just need to look at the traditional industries where people like to go to master copy. We should also look at the industries which make up most of the rest of the world. And here you are, an example of good copy, an example of bad copy. Try to err towards the former.
So the final piece of copy that we are going to look at, good and bad examples of, is probably the type of copy that you are probably going to be least likely to get hired to write. I am, of course, talking about long-form direct response sales letters. Now, the common question that we get is, do people actually read these? And the answer is often yes. Not everybody in the world looks and experiences the world the same way that you do. That's just the fact. Now, one of the reasons why we know that people actually do read these is because people still buy from long-form direct response ads. Typically, the way that these work is you will see an email arrive in your inbox or some PPC ad, and if you click them or interact with them in some way, it will take you to this ad. And typically, there's either a video or an HTML version of this where you can actually read the text. And so what I'm going to show you are actual examples of pieces of copy, one good and one bad. One I know sold millions of dollars and was the control for many, many years, and one that was actually kind of terrible. So in the interest of time, I'm not going to read all of this to you. This is the headline complex of a piece of long-form direct response. This is what's called the eyebrow copy. This is the headline, the fastest way to make a legal fortune in America today. Forget about the stock market options or risky, low probability money-making schemes. This phenomenon, I call subversive income, is the fastest, most reliable method I've ever encountered to make $1 million more, even in today's rotten economy. Okay. So here's some things that are immediately working for it. It's intriguing. It feels different from things that are, people are used to. So it feels unique. It's ultra specific. It's very immediately useful, as in there's a clear benefit being applied here. And it doesn't follow that sort of cliche, how to accomplish and get this benefit without this pain point. Like, that headline's been done a million times before, and it still kind of works, but most benefit-driven headlines aren't really working. Intrigue and fascination is what's working right now. It's working really well here. That's one of the reasons why the sales letter has actually done millions of dollars worth of sales. And as you can see, it's thousands of words long. We're only going to cover the first part, but if you look at the lead is what typically follows the headline and comes before the body copy. The lead, I'm going to go here. You can pause the video if you want. Then here, you pause the video if you want. Then here, you can pause the video if you want. Then here, you can pause the video if you want. Then here, you can pause the video if you want. Then here, you can pause the video if you want. And then here, you can pause the video if you want. That was the lead. It's 1,330 words long. It is extremely benefit-driven. It is extremely fascination-driven. And most importantly, it answers very clearly the objection, what's in it for me, immediately. The most important thing that's going on here in this particular lead is definitely the fact that it fascinates, it encourages people to read the rest of the promotion and find out what this actually is, and find out what these techniques actually are. One thing that clearly kills long-form direct response copy is any situation where the reader can say, oh, I've seen something like this before, and then just bucket it and dismiss it. Another thing that's working really well in this lead is the fact that it immediately comes out with proof that doesn't give away what the actual things are. It's showing that there's some credibility and some believability here. Another thing that's working really well is that it actually has a disqualifier. It basically tells people, like, hey, this is not going to work for you if you are like this or if you're expecting this. A lot of copy nowadays does not have this, and that's why people tend to see bad results with their long form. Finally, the last thing that's working really well for this piece of copy is that it just flows really well. If you read it out loud and actually go through it, you'll find that everything just naturally and very cleanly segues from one idea to the next without ever losing the main topic that it's trying to focus on. So if you are looking to write or looking to assess long-form direct response copy, keep those things in mind, because those things will actually allow you to write better long-form direct response. And honest to God, there's a lot of bad stuff out there. Speaking of bad long-form direct response, this is the first sales letter that I ever wrote. It did not do very well. Now, here's the thing. I'm not going to be one of those like copy gurus who like never shows you the copy that I write. Like, this is it. I'm also not going to be one of those gurus who like never shows you like when I flub it. I flubbed this. So let's find out why this is bad copy. First off, this right here, all Americans with a valid US email address can claim, like, what is this? It can claim like a 30-day blueprint. Okay. So that particular headline complex, that was a format that I stole from what are called book promos, where basically you can claim a book or claim some sort of guide, but really this was an autoresponder course. And by the way, this is for the same product that the other sales letter was for, and the offer was valid for, and then there was supposed to be some sort of countdown timer here, and then do you want to be my next millionaire, Mark Morgan Ford? As you can see, not enough intrigue here, not enough fascination. Like, where's the innate desire for anything here? There isn't any. So it really relies on like you wanting this thing, but like it doesn't really give you any reason to want this thing. It's not very useful. It's not very unique. Now, if you actually go into the lead, I'll let you like pause the video. You can read this and then read this and then read this. And that was my lead. It's very bullet driven. And again, the inspiration for those bullets in that particular lead structure, it comes from book promos. But this isn't a book. It's basically a club/course. And what you'll quickly notice as you try to read this is it kind of jumps from all over the place. It's very I-focused and not very you-focused, meaning it's not interested in like what's in it for the reader. And also, like, if you read this, the copy just doesn't flow very well. It's not very clean. It's not very intriguing. It just feels like it's talking at the reader. It's not good copy.
So there you go. There are some real examples of good and bad copy that are out there in the world. I hope you learn from them. But we're not just going to leave it at that. We also want to wrap this up with some classic tips. So here are 4 tips to generally improve your copywriting and make sure that you are going for the good and not for the bad.
So here's my piece of advice for actually writing good copy. Write emotionally. Actually think about what people are thinking about, what they're worried about, what they care about, and actually write with those things in mind. A very easy way to do that is to kind of look at the verbs that you're using and the language that you're using, and to really understand what your prospects are caring about so that you can phrase things in a way so that your prospect will actually care about them. An easy way to find out if your copy is just kind of weak and not very emotional, look and see if every single one of your sentences has the verb to be. Is, was, isn't, are, am, was, wasn't, etc., etc. What you'll find is that when your sentences all have the same verb over and over, your sentence just sounds like a toddler is speaking. It's not very good, and it's not going to emotionally resonate with your reader.
So the tip I want to share with you, and I hope you remember for the rest of your life, is to be relevant. Often when we're talking about relevance, we're talking about making sure you're aware of the context that your reader has before they're reading your copy. So that means if you are writing an email, being aware of how they got onto your email list in the first place. I also want to stress that it's really important to think about when people are reading your copy. That doesn't mean just what time of day, but also what's going on in the world. Are there things that are happening in the news or culturally that you can talk about that are going to deepen your relationship with your readers? Or are there things that you should maybe avoid talking about because mentioning something that's connected to them might distract your readers from why they connect with your business in the first place?
The tip I want to leave you with is remember to fulfill your readers' expectations. This is something that copywriters forget about quite a bit when they just think about copy in isolation. If your reader has clicked onto something and then read your copy, make sure you know what they saw before, because if you go in a completely different direction, oftentimes they're going to switch off. Don't take them in a completely different direction to the way they're expecting to go, because that's going to lose their interest.
And one of my personal favorite, show, don't tell. I want to challenge you when you are writing copy, look at every single line and think about a way that you could better illustrate what you are telling people with an emotional story, with a tidbit of specificity, some sort of report, some sort of statistic. What is a way that you can bring in an illustration of an important concept that you are trying to tell people, that you're trying to convey to people? It is one of the best ways to bring emotionality and persuasion in your copy.
Okay, and that wraps up a now quite long video on how to tell the difference between good copy and bad copy. Make sure going forward that you never ever again fall into any of the 4 misconceptions we laid out at the beginning of the video. Keep in mind the examples that we went through on the different mediums of copy, and make sure to always show, don't tell, use powerful verbs, be relevant, and fulfill your readers' expectations so that you can never ever again write bad copy. If you want more tips, tricks, advice, one-offs, funny videos, excerpts, blurbs, masterclasses, or just to support this project that we call Copy That, you can go right now to patreon.com/thecopythatshow and sign up for a membership. It's great. We love you. But make sure you don't do that until you are really committed to this copywriting journey and you are hopefully making some money in copywriting, because you have everything you need to start your journey right here on this free YouTube channel. Take care.